This is the true story of what happened when rockets and rituals lead to a hole in the sky where something came through. Was it aliens? Was it a supernatural spirit? Or just imagination? Stay tuned, because this is the stranger-than-fiction true story of what would come to be a rocket research school, a worldwide religion, and aliens from another dimension. So let's go back to the beginning, where it all started. In the winter of 1946, two men drew a circle in the California desert and asked the universe to answer. One was a rocket scientist who helped set the stage for mankind to leave the Earth. The other would one day found a religion. They lit candles. They whispered ancient names. And they believed, truly, that a door could open. His name was John Whiteside Parsons, Jack to everyone who knew him. He was young, handsome, and a little dangerous. He smelled like powder and fuel. He lived fast. He made things explode on purpose when everybody else did it by accident. In canyons and dry riverbeds around Pasadena, he and a handful of friends tested engines that bucked and screamed. Engines that most respectable scientists called impossible. They called themselves the Suicide Squad, half as a joke and half as a warning. From their failures and burns and narrow escapes, a laboratory took shape. First in shacks in the Arroyo Seco, and then as a real institution, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. A place that would eventually send machines to other worlds. But if rockets were the fire that lit his days, midnight belonged to something older. Jack was a magician, a follower of Aleister Crowley's creed, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." He kept a sword above his bed and an altar in his room. He wrote invocations in a beautiful, dangerous hand. He didn't see a contradiction between propellant formulas and ritual diagrams. To him, they were both languages for changing reality. The other man was Lafayette Ronald Hubbard, L. Ron to his friends. Not a prophet yet, not a founder, not a leader in crisp naval jackets. In 1946, he was a pulp writer with a talent for telling stories so vividly you could almost taste them. He was charming. He was hungry. People either adored him or swore never to speak his name again. He said he'd seen things on far seas and far stranger places in the mind. He liked to sit with his eyes half-lidded and drift into a story as if he had left his body behind to scout ahead. They met in a house that should not have existed, and yet could only have existed exactly then, the parsonage. An old mansion on Orange Grove, full of brilliant misfits and open doors. Scientists in oil-stained coveralls wandered past artists in velvet robes. Politics and poetry and esoterica tangled in the kitchen over martinis and coffee. The rent was paid by rocket checks, and the walls were soaked with incense and laughter. The parsonage ran on a single rule: don't be boring. Hubbard arrived as a guest who became a fixture. He had that gravity people mistake for destiny. He asked questions no one else thought to ask, not just how do your engines work, but what do they want? He and Parsons would sit up late, the windows black and the cigarettes a constellation in the dark, and talk about the will, about the soul, about whether the universe had hinges you could pry at with the right words. Parsons had been studying a working, a sequence of ritual operations handed down in whispers and marginalia. Its purpose was audacious, to call the archetype of the divine feminine into flesh. Thelemites called her Babalon, Scarlet Woman, Mother of Abominations, the force that destroys and redeems. The lore said that through her a moonchild could be conceived, a being born to change the course of an age. In January, the bedroom becomes a temple. Red cloth, painted Sigelson the floor, a sword, a chalice, a mirror, black as a well at midnight. Incense as thick as fog. Then the words, sung, whispered, choked, words older than any science. Hubbard takes the role of scribe and seer. He closes his eyes and speaks whatever rises, colors no one else can see, gusts of wind that move no curtains, footsteps that do not belong to anyone living. Parsons feels the pressure change, like a storm about to break. He writes in his journal that night, "I am on the edge of something that is not empty. A gate has stirred." The ritual continues for nights. Outside, in the arroyo, they test an engine that roars itself to pieces and leaves a burned crescent on the ground. Inside, the invocations build, banishing, invoking, banishing again. Hubbard mutters about a brown-yellow light pulsing beyond the wall. "A presence," he says, "watching." Parsons writes, "I do believe a portal is open." He is not speaking in metaphor. On the last night, he cries out to the desert, "Babalon, descend." The candles gutter. The room sinks into an awful, ordinary silence. There is no voice. There is no goddess. Morning pries their eyes open. They clean the ash. They leave the circle chalked on the floor rather than break it out of superstition or hope. And then someone knocks at the door. She is tall. She is striking. She has red hair like a wound in the sun and green eyes that cut through the room like a blade. She does not know anyone there. She is an artist with a ferocious aura and the kind of composure that looks like prophecy. Her name is Marjorie Cameron. She has come, she says, because she felt like she should. Parsons stares as if he's been hit between the eyes. He whispers to Hubbard, "She's here." That night, his journal is almost calm in its terror. "I have my elemental. As specified, red hair, slanted green eyes. She has come to me." He takes this as a sign not to finish, but to begin. There is a second phase to the working. It is not for cameras or for polite rooms. He and Cameron become lovers and partners. The ritual is no longer abstract, it's breathing. Outside the temple, the parsonage turns and burns with the usual dramas of human hearts. Hubbard begins an affair with Parsons' former lover, Betty. Charms turn into schemes and schemes into contracts. A business is born on paper. Yachts to be bought cheap and sold dear. Profits split among gentlemen with ink on their fingers. Documents are signed. Checks are written. And one day, Hubbard and Betty are gone. They have a boat. They have the money. Florida is wider and emptier than California. It can swallow a man and his intentions whole. Parsons does not go quietly to a lawyer. He goes to the altar. He burns a sigil and reads out a curse in a voice that makes the floorboards shudder. Then he boards a plane. In Florida, he watches the horizon and writes, absurdly, magnificently, that he will call a storm to bring his boat back. A storm does form, lines of black thunder marching across the coast, and the boat does return to port. In the end, the law does what the law can. A settlement, a partial repayment, the ache of humiliation that never quite drains out of the bones. Hubbard marries Betty soon after, despite the inconvenient fact that he is already married to someone else. Paper catches up with destiny only when it feels like it. News travels in strange directions. Across the Atlantic, Aleister Crowley hears the gossip from his agents and writes to Carl Germer with that mix of acid and amusement he wore like a perfume. He calls Hubbard a confidence man. He calls Parsons a good-natured fool. Please warn him, Crowley says, that this is the kind of business that ends in loss. Back in Pasadena, the rituals change shape. Cameron is no longer a prophecy. She is a woman with a studio and a temper and a terrifying will. Parsons writes that Babylon is incarnate upon the earth, and that the work now is to make oneself worthy of her. He believes they have opened something, and that what is opened will not be closed by denying it happened. Then, like a match struck in another state, 1947 begins to throw off sparks. A pilot named Kenneth Arnold sees discs move in a way no aircraft should, near Mount Rainier. In the desert of New Mexico, something falls, and a story spools out of Roswell into every American living room. The Air Force begins a file it will never quite finish. People who never look up start craning their necks at night and filling their mouths with the word saucer. In Pasadena, Parsons notes curious phenomena after the working. He writes that the air feels thin and electric, that there is a vibration like a held breath over the desert. It is enough for some to sew a thread from one moment to another: ritual, portal, lights. Is there a link? There is proximity. There is no proof. But stories do not require proof to change the world. They require belief. Hubbard moves on upstream and upriver and gathers people into a new current. He speaks about the mind as if it were a machine with stuck reels, about pain that can be rewound, about lives that extend beyond a single birth. The cosmology will come later, glorious and lurid. For now, there is a promise that feels like oxygen in a closed room. He will call it Dianetics. Then, Scientology. He will wear a crisp naval cap and stand on a deck and look like the future's grandfather. Parsons tries to square circles that refuse to be tamed. Money thins. Contracts evaporate. The government looks sideways at his political sympathies and his private rituals. Friends become politely unavailable, and doors that once opened to him stick, then slam. Cameron paints visions that unsettle guests into silence. The parsonage drifts, then finally empties like a tide pool under a cruel sun. On a June afternoon in 1952, in a garage laboratory in Pasadena, Jack Parsons mixes chemicals the way a pianist plays a key he can no longer name. By feel, so trained, it looks like instinct. He is packing a case for a job in Mexico, arranging manuscripts he insists must travel with him. A jar falls, or a fuse kisses a spark, or a hand slips, slick with sweat. The blast rips the room so suddenly the neighbors think a truck has hit the building. When the smoke lifts, Parsons is on the floor, mangled but awake. He tries to speak. He dies before night. He is 37. People who loved him, and people who owed him nothing, come to the same quiet terror. What happened? Was it an accident? A murder? A ritual end? The FBI has files thick enough to serve as a pillow, and they do what files do. They hold facts in a way that does not make sense until you forget you were trying to make sense of them. Cameron walks through the empty rooms like a guardian of a sealed tomb. She says later that she was not summoned, she was sent. It is the sort of sentence you cannot prove and cannot shake. If you want a tidy ending, you will not find it here. The laboratory Jack bled for blooms into grander buildings and then into flight itself. Probes and landers, eyes on Saturn's rings, wheels on Martian regolith. The house where ritual and research shared a dinner table is gone, paved into another unremarkable address in a city that forgets and remembers on the same breath. Hubbard's new thing grows into a structure that towers over cities and law books. It has its own rituals now, and its own words you cannot question without feeling the floor tilt. Cameron becomes a cult figure in a different sense, a muse of the fierce and weird, a flame for artists who like their saints with blood on their hands. As for the other question, the one that keeps people awake in motel rooms along interstate lines, the sky has not stopped being strange. Lights still dance where they shouldn't. Pilots still file reports and then erase them with nervous laughter. Government programs change names like snakes changing skins. The story slips and reforms. It is tempting, sitting here in the quiet, to imagine the circle in the desert still faintly glowing, a seam that never quite healed. But temptation is not evidence. It is, however, a kind of gravity. Before he died, Parsons wrote something that doesn't sound like physics or sorcery. It sounds like a note to himself, left in the pages of a life he knew he was writing too fast. No man can stand in one world only. To create is to be torn between what is and what could be. He stood with one foot on a launch pad and one in a magic circle, and he dared the universe to make him choose. Maybe the universe did. Maybe it didn't. Maybe, as the rockets rose, the door in the dark opened just wide enough for one red-haired woman to step through, look around, and decide to stay. There is a photograph of Jack at a test stand, hair in disarray, goggles pushed up, a grin on his face that makes him look like a boy who just found the fuse to God's attic. There is another of Hubbard, older, etched with certainty, a hand lifted in a gesture that could be blessing or benediction or salesmanship. Between them is a thread that leads through a house, through a ritual, through a storm, through a crash, through 1,000 dinner tables where people lean in and say, "Okay, but do you think any of it was real?" Here is what is real. A laboratory that changed the human horizon. A woman with hair like a banner who walked into a story and refused to become a footnote. A man who could talk the future into walking. And a magician who strapped dynamite to the idea that the world is closed and dared it to hold. The rest is wind. The rest is stars. The rest is you, looking up, listening for the soft click of a latch you can't see, wondering whether the night is empty or just quiet. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more strange but true stories.